That's right. Welcome.
I donated that. I don't want to lose that cap. No, it's our cap. It's a donation.
The meeting is open. Oh, it's awesome. Please, so let's. You ready? The meeting is open. Thank you. First, on our agenda is public comment, as always, and we are going to, is there anyone here who wants to speak on something not on the agenda? No, but we have a special presentation tonight. And I want to thank Michael Kasparian for suggesting this. It's extremely timely, and we're all interested in it. Oh, wait a moment. Minutes, Paul?
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of the minutes of December 13th, 2022, and December 27th, 2022, with some minor corrections.
All in favor? Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Now, Michael Kasparian is going to speak to us from the Chamber of Commerce on the housing and effect on businesses of the housing shortage. And this is a very, very timely topic. So thank you for suggesting it. Thank you for coming tonight, and we're ready to hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you very much. I'm Michael Kasparian. I'm president of the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, and I think I know pretty much everybody here. And I want to really thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you. About a month ago, I think it was more than a month ago, we had conducted a over 1 hour interview with the Falmouth Enterprise on housing and the effect on businesses and everybody in Falmouth. And that was reported in the Enterprise, and what happened was I had a conversation with Mr. Fox, and then also reached out to some people. They chose to focus on one specific idea we had, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about that interview, a little bit about our thoughts from the Chamber, and then I'll talk a little bit about specifics going on. So first and foremost, what I think is important for people to understand is that our Chamber of Commerce is a little bit different than the traditional model of chambers of commerce. We are not a business-focused chamber. We are a community-focused Chamber of Commerce. And that can be best reflected in the makeup of our Board of Directors. So for those of you who don't know, our Board of Directors is comprised not only of business people, but also Falmouth Police Department, Falmouth Public Schools, Cape Cod Healthcare, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, several nonprofits, local artisans, and people from the faith community. Because we feel that what's good for Falmouth is good for business. And we don't feel that, good business practice has to be exclusive of what's good for people. First and foremost, of course, is housing, which we think is probably the biggest challenge right now, which we would put in a crisis situation. The statistics that we're paying attention to are the fact that our understanding in working with housing folks is that in order for any community to be able to house everybody that works in that community, 30% of residential properties need to be long-term rentals. And that's our belief that there's honor in all work. So whether you're serving somebody a cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, or you're the cardiac surgeon at Falmouth Hospital, you have the right to live in Falmouth, and that housing should be available for you to be able to buy and raise a family here. Currently in Falmouth, that number is 5% of homes available for long-term rental. And as a result, the majority of our businesses are really suffering from trying to attract and retain employees. We did produce, through FCTV, a 3-part affordable housing series. I think many of you have seen it, in which we invited in the stakeholders in the community to talk about the challenges they've had in attracting and retaining people in the first part, to really try to get people to understand how it's a town-wide problem. In the second part, we brought in all the executive directors of the different agencies, Falmouth Housing Authority, Falmouth Housing Trust, Habitat, et cetera, to talk about the different types of housing. Because when we talk about affordable housing, sometimes that kind of gets a negative connotation, which I'm not certain why. In fact, we want to start calling it just housing. Because again, our belief is that everyone deserves to live in the town that they work in. We heard from those different agencies about the different populations that they serve, and that there's a need for low-income housing rentals. There's a need for just rentals for young professionals or people who don't necessarily want to own a home. People coming in and kind of kicking the tires and see if they want to stay in Falmouth. There's also a need for first-time homes. And these agencies are working diligently to make this happen. But our concern, of course, is that the numbers aren't coming fast enough. You know, I meet with the executive directors from the different chambers once a month here on Cape Cod. And I can tell you that Falmouth is light years ahead of the majority of towns here as far as affordable housing. Some of the things we applauded, of which comes from your good work, is the ADU bylaw, which is really phenomenal. That's something that not every town has, is really starting to take on, and we feel as if that's a very, very wonderful thing that people are going to be able to take advantage of. The other thing was that amazing overlay that was done on Route 28, the town meeting, a few town meetings ago voted in, where by right, people were able to put residential properties above commercial space. And what I think made that such a win-win was there was an amendment on the floor of town meeting by people representing the environmental concerns that they didn't want it to go beyond the Seward area. And we thought that was a win-win, and that was a good solution, because the environment and the care of the environment is just as important. So we have to work together to take care of this, this jewel that we live in, this almost 80 miles of coastline and the watershed and everything that we need to protect. But we're very hopeful because there's a lot of smart people here in this town. We have the scientific community. We have retired folks who have worked. We have people in our town. We really know that our select board understands the problem and is committed to trying to find the solutions. We know that the town meeting members also understand there's a problem and are committed to finding solutions. And there are several projects going on right now which we believe have merit. And our philosophy really is that all projects or any thinking outside of the box should be considered until it's deemed not viable. So specifically what's going on, Michael Galasso is proposing turning the old Royal Nursing facility into housing. And it's an incredibly cool model, which, you know, a percentage of the homes of the apartments would have private baths, a percentage would have shared baths, would be communal kitchen area, communal living area, and would very much take care of a lot of the housing for restaurant workers, summer workers, folks from the scientific community, the hospital that need to put people up. Falmouth EDIC is also working on micro units at the Falmouth station, and that's something that I know is ongoing. But again, my understanding is there could be 60 to 80 micro units could be added there, which would also provide a significant amount of housing, young professionals, for people to come in. Most recently, the Saxon Partners has come forward and with an idea which was just put in the paper the other day. We're very curious and interested in how that goes on. I know that they're proposing 300, 600, or 900 units. I don't know what the right number would be, but if it's viable and seems to be viable and planning and the town seems to think that that's a good thing, I think those things should be considered. But particularly what we talked about in that interview, and what we wanted to kind of clarify here is that while these projects are being done, which will take time, and while the agencies continue doing their good work, Falmouth Housing Authority, Falmouth Housing Trust, we need to be looking ahead. And by looking ahead, one of the things that our board of directors feels is that the town should be looking at town-owned properties to see if they're the highest and best use. One suggestion we came up with, which I know has brought a very emotional response, is for the town to take a look at the Lawrence School property. Strictly from the perspective that it represents the largest piece of property contiguous to downtown. My understanding in conversations with members of this group is that the downtown area is a good area for density. We have sewers, and would be a great place. We're not suggesting that we build buildings or do anything over there. We don't have a specific plan. All we're saying is that these town-owned properties should be looked at. Is that the highest and best use? In that particular property, our thought is that if down the road, could the building be adapted for either condominiums or apartments? Could the rest of the property that's there be developed into single-family homes to coincide with the neighborhood that's next there? There are modest-sized homes there that were zoned years ago. If we can build houses that are smaller, that are affordable, we don't have to call it affordable housing. Could money taken from that development, along with state funds, contribute to building a new state-of-the-art junior high school for our students and our teachers on the high school campus? This building itself we look at the lifespan of this building and where it's located, with the water and the rising sea that's coming, could this area be better utilized for perhaps parking or something else? If in fact we were to look long-term at the Lawrence School project, we have the school administration building, which is pretty close to the geographic center of town, which has a very large piece of property attached to that. Could in the future an annex or a building be built there where town offices could be moved there, a new police department could be built there, and then this could be parking where the police department is? Could there be more housing built there, as the authority is doing for senior citizens across the street at the former Cape Cod 5? Could another building be built on the other side? These are just thoughts that we have and ideas that we wanted to share. And the idea being that we think that the entire community should be having this conversation. We're not saying we know it can be done, and we know that all these things will generate emotional responses for and against, and that's a good thing. We want the conversation to happen. You know, I was speaking to Jed a little bit earlier. Frankly, we're kind of tired of talking about the problem, and we want to start talking about solutions. These projects we mentioned, and also the one project I forgot to mention that's coming that we're excited about, is the Kimco project. I know that it would be the result of years of work through the Cape Cod Commission and your group, you know, with the form-based zoning and everything down there. That would be absolutely a win-win all the way around as well. And that would continue to add to the housing stock. But our point is to think outside of the box, try to see if the town can look a little bit further, come up with a strategic, long-term, big-picture plan on all these properties that we own, see if they can be better utilized, and they might be the next step once we get these other projects, completed.
This was planned as a discussion, not just a presentation, but a discussion. So we're welcoming comments, reactions from the board, from the public, and I would like to comment first to say I really appreciated the things that you recommended, that they focused on the downtown area, just as this board has done, and that went along with the Cape Cod Commission. Bob Masali is here. He's our representative to the commission. The Cape Cod Commission's long-range comprehensive plan is to have different areas of town divided by density and use in a way. And the high-density things would be the downtown area, so that you're protecting the character of Cape Cod as a whole if, as a regional plan, the individual towns use that. And you were, I think maybe, you were looking at that when you made your recommendations. So I know you got jumped on for them, but I thought they were good recommendations and worth really looking at to see. I think the other thing that would be useful would be to have, and I know we have it on our website, but to make it more easy to get to, a map of all the town-owned properties, if that's what we're looking at. But most of them, of course, are nowhere near the sewers. And that's really the big drawback. So I want to thank you first for the effort you've put into this, and it certainly is what we need to do. Would
you.
the board like to comment? Jim?
Well, just on the town-owned properties, if people want to study it, we have a great resource. It's a map geo facility that the towns put up on the internet. It has everything, and the town-owned properties are all in green, so we already have a map. You can just go look at it and see everything right there. So if people want to study it, it's real easy to do. I think it's just, I don't know, Falmouth Map Geo, and is that,
It's up there right now.
well, that doesn't have the green doesn't have, the one I know shows the town properties in green.
You just have to select it in part of the themes,
Okay.
but
It's
that's,
just a theme, but, so that's it. So you can see all the town-owned properties in one glance all over town. And it's a great resource. I use it all the time, but it's a relatively new thing and not too people know about it. I would encourage everybody. It has all the zoning on it, every parcel. It's a great tool. And our IT department put up, I don't know, about 6 months ago. I don't know the timing of it. But it's just fantastic. It's a really good tool. I suggest everybody take a chance to look at it. It goes down to showing you where the telephone poles are on every single parcel in town. It's an unbelievable planning tool that everyone should know about. It's out there for us to use.
Back to housing.
Yep. So 5 or 6 years ago, I sent a letter to the Enterprise asking for an inventory of town property, and that never happened. But before I came, I wrote down a bunch of notes about housing. And as some of you know, I've been a housing advocate for the past 29 years with a construction super for Habitat for Humanity, so I'm not new to this. And some of the things that I thought of is we have the accessory, the ADU bylaw that restricts you to 40%. And we have had people say that, how come I can't rent both? And the owner occupancy for one of the units has to be in place. And I don't know if we could change that a little bit to allow both units to be rented as long as one is deemed restricted as affordable. We could also work with properties that are larger, 1 and 2 acre zoned properties that have big houses on them and allow a greater percentage of the floor area, like 50%. So you have a 2-family house that you see in a lot of cities and other towns where, it's half the house is an apartment. And if you have the septic system that it can accommodate the number of bedrooms, I think we should do that. Whereas some of these houses, to cut off 40% just doesn't work, architecturally even. So I think that should be something that we looked at. I also think some of the housing entities should look at existing housing stock as opposed to building brand new stock. This would do a couple things. It would kind of cut down on the number of people who come here and buy a second home, then tear it down and build some McMansion. And gentrify the neighborhood, which raises people's taxes in these lower housing, smaller housing districts. Let's see. We could reduce, I've also looked at workforce housing out at Joint Base Cape Cod. We have the Sandwich area there. If you look at the map, there's a large chunk of land right there that we could look at. Get the state involved in this. Why should it just fall on us? They could be trailer homes or miniature houses or whatever you want to call them. Utilizing town-owned property, the pumping station right up off of Palmer Ave. And there are other school properties. I would hate to see the Lawrence School get taken over. That's the best school building we got. The other buildings really are the greatest buildings to teach in, and I've taught in 3 of them. And the high school is probably the worst, even the remodeled one. We lost a great opportunity to reuse that building for a lot of these purposes, like town hall, the police emergency call system, fire station, but that ship has sailed, and it's one of the 2 things I can't get over. The Super Bowl loss to the Giants the first time, and using the high school, remodeling the high school as opposed to building a brand new one out there. Let's see, what else? We also have the conversion bylaw. I think we could tweak that a little bit. So that we have these older houses that would make it easier to convert them and less restrictive for for what we have now. And then transportation has to be a big factor in all this. If we would put something out at the base, we have a shuttle system. The town I grew up in emptied every day because people worked in Boston. And but we had a transportation system. You jumped on the bus, you jumped on the MBTA, and now, because they've allowed so much growth in the town, there's gridlock trying to get out of town now. And property values have gone up, and rents have not gotten cheaper. I could not afford to live in the town I grew up in because of the exponential growth. A house next door to my brother's burned down. It was a single-family home. They put 6 units in there, charged $1 million a unit, and, you know, who can afford to buy a condo for $1 million when you're a blue-collar worker? So transportation is a big issue with me, that I've been talking about it not only for beaches and things like that, using the satellite parking lots at the schools and shuttling people into town, but also getting people onto the Cape. Because I don't think we can have everybody live here that wants to live here. I mean, most people commute, and unfortunately, that causes pollution and things like that. But we need to make it easier for people that may not want to live in Falmouth. I was told as a teacher, you don't want to live in the town you teach in. And most of the teachers that I worked with lived in other towns. But even just Cape-wide, the transportation really isn't what it should be. So that's a component to housing, I think.
Bob, you know, remember we had the housing summit and they talked about our targets, the accessory apartment bylaw, the
Yeah.
multifamily housing,
Yeah.
the conversion
Conversion
bylaw
bylaw.
is the next, but I don't think anyone knows what that is.
Yeah.
It's you can convert any house into up to 4 units in the town. But there's 2 restrictions we've got to talk about it. One, they don't allow you to add on to it anymore, because it was really meant to just convert big old houses. That's how it was passed. But also, what is it, the 4 units, it just couldn't be any bigger, so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what saved those houses on Palmer
Oh,
Ave.
it was done in Palmer Ave, so if we, the other one was the date. It was
Oh, yeah,
restricted to 1984.
Yeah,
Was when the bylaw was passed.
Yeah.
And we talked about changing the date.
yeah.
And allowing modest additions, and then bang, you could get to what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And that was the 4th thing on our low-hanging fruit
Right.
thing that we haven't accomplished yet. But I don't think anyone remembers that, but I
Yeah.
just thought I'd refresh even the board members of those, that should be next.
Pat?
I hear what
Thank
Bob
you.
is saying about this Lawrence School, but I'm way in favor of doing that because it's close to Town Hall, where we are right now, and Town Hall needs to be moved. I don't know how many of you remember about Hurricane Sandy and how they were elevating all the records because it was supposed to splash right across in here. So Town Hall has a very finite lifespan there. And it solves a parking issue, because during the day you'd have Town Hall parking, and in the evening you'd have, hopefully, affordable apartments above. But we're all dealing with a horrendous problem that the state DEP is going to stuff down our throats something that nobody wants in regard to sewering.
Yeah.
It's going to chase people off the Cape, period, because they will no longer be able to afford to live here. And I don't know whether we stage a civil revolt or what we do on that, because it's no good for anybody, and they're stuffing it in our throats.
Non-funded mandate.
Probably many agree with you, but I'd like to stick to the
I
housing
know.
right now.
But that,
No, if I could
That
just
is a part of
comment.
housing, though. That's,
Yeah.
Right.
that's why we can't have housing, because we don't have the ability to put it anywhere.
Right.
They're two
If I could just
related.
comment back to you on one thing, because out of everything we talk about, it's this Lawrence School suggestion that creates this emotional response, which I understand. And again, that's a good thing, we'll have the conversation. What we're saying is, from a specific, long-range term, if the town was to look at the highest and best use of all its property and take the emotion out of it, what makes the most sense? And we're certainly not saying to take a building away from the school department. We would replace, our proposal would be to somehow find a way to replace that building with a new building. So we're not saying that's it, we're closing a building. We're looking at it as it could be a win-win, and we're not saying it's something, this would be something that would have to be discussed and worked on with the school committee and the town. We're not here making any specific proposal. We're just talking about ideas. And we're not trying to say this is what we think has to happen. We want to invite everybody to be a part of the
Well,
conversation.
everybody's just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. That's all this is. I mean,
Well,
that's
I
why
think the
it's a
thing is, it's
discussion.
trying to get everybody to start talking.
Yeah.
The school department talking, with the town, with the businesses and everybody to try to get an idea. I mean, my junior high school, right, is housing now. This isn't a novel idea. This is something Provincetown has done and Nantucket has done. And Warwick, Rhode Island's been doing it since the 1980s. And it's not that we're targeting a specific building or a school, but it is the largest piece of town-owned property contiguous to downtown, which coincides with the sewering, the density, and everything that this board and the Cape Cod Commission has talked about. So to us, it's a common-sense solution. And if it could be a win-win all the way around, you know. I know there was a comment made that Framingham just built a junior high school for $98 million. And of course, that's a shocking number. But of course, the state put $49 million of that in there. So if that was something of a model, that property represents a significant value to a developer that would help defray the other 50% of that cost. And it wouldn't necessarily, so, and I don't know that to be true because I'm not a developer. What we're saying is we should look at it and let experts and professionals, that's why we have a town planner, right? To look at these things and to come back and say, and if it's not viable, well, okay, it's not viable. Let's check it off the list and move on to the next thing. But the crisis we're in right now, everything should be on the table until it's not. All these projects we talked about earlier, you know, I have a daughter that graduated college this semester. I have another one who's a sophomore in college. They can't afford to live here. And this is a wonderful town. You know, my wife's been teaching in the high school since 1988. We chose to raise our children here. It's a wonderful place, but I know my kids aren't coming back here because they can't afford to come back here. And then if this continues, businesses are going to start failing. I can tell you at the chamber, right now, daily we get phone calls from people either looking for a place to live or business owners calling saying they need places to think about. The summer's coming. Hey, what's going on, Michael? Where are we going to house these people? I don't know if we can do this another summer season. We don't have enough people. As you know, restaurants aren't open 6 days or 7 days. Businesses are scaling back. The services industries can't hire people. This is very, very, you know, Cape Cod Healthcare, 500 open positions. Hui, 120 open positions. So, you know, long-term, our concern is if we start having business failures, that's going to start affect the town in a very bad way. And that's going to have the negative impact on real estate values if people start saying, I don't want to live here anymore, and I'm going to leave. So, you know, the town is filled with a lot of smart people, a lot of passionate people. We want the conversation to include everybody, not just town meeting members, but the entire community. Town meeting members, community, select board, this group, school, everybody, all the stakeholders, to try to do some type of long-term planning and coming up with some considerations that compromises so we can come for the benefit of the entire town.
If it's going to be everybody, but things that are happening in other places that have the same problem, the private owners are building housing for their workforce. This has gone on as long as the Industrial Revolution has been here in America. It's not a new idea, but it's not being really acted upon by the business owners that we have here. I know of only 3 business owners in town who have built housing or rent housing on behalf of their workforce. There's a possibility. On the other side of it, the town itself, if the town is worried enough, has to be willing to invest in the infrastructure that makes it possible. You mentioned Kimco. Kimco has run into a real problem on the sewering, on the lift station, the cost of the lift station. Who's responsible for that? If Falmouth, typically, cities at least, and we're growing, put in the infrastructure. They do the roads, they do the sewers, they do the pathways for the utilities. We might have to raise our taxes, horrifying as that might be to a number of people, to be able to make it possible to have the housing come that we claim that we need to support the development everybody advocates. It's going to hit every taxpayer's pocket, and they have to be ready for that. The other thing I'd like to mention before we move on, myself think that the next thing this board really needs to study and work on is we need some type of control over short-term rentals. They're stealing too many rentals away. People are going to VRBO, going to Airbnb. It's changing neighborhoods they're a problem. Other communities are finding ways to bring a control to it and either remove the problem or add those properties to their rental portfolio, which would be a good thing. And I think we need to look at it and see if it's something there's an appetite for on the board and in the town, and maybe get a workforce here, a subcommittee going to take a look at that. Paul and Pam. Pam? You want to say something?
Once you go, you're on the housing planning group.
So one of the things, Mike, was at a meeting of, I forgot what that meeting was now, and we were talking about people our age, the almost seniors.
Almost seniors.
Almost.
Right.
I don't want to be there yet, but the fact that who's going to take care of us? I mean, we all just sort of think everything will just evolve and there will be CNAs and all sorts of medical professionals to help us out as we get older. It's not going to happen if they have no place to live. So, I mean, there's a whole generation of people who are going to need the services. Those people who provide the services need to live someplace. On the flip side, after having spent 12 years on a school committee in another town, Charlotte hates that I mention another town. But anyway, in the town of Acton, where, sorry, I'm not really sorry,
You
but
made it a whole year without mentioning that.
She just
I
ruined her
feel the
record.
darts, you know.
That's an inside joke, so just pass it.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I spent 12 years on the Acton Boxborough School Committee, where we went through a tremendous plunge in the school population. It wasn't just Massachusetts, it was nationally. And we trace the demographics and what's happening and birth rates, and we always go up and down. I mean, it's just a natural phenomena. So we thought, well, let's sell some of our schools and do something for housing or do something for whatever it was. And then we said, you know what? Those numbers come back. And what we're trying to do is grow our population of younger people here, which is why we're in the process of, I'm sure you've heard, of building a Y, because we want to bring young families here. Young families need schools. It's so extraordinarily expensive to build a from-scratch school, even with the SBA loans and everything else that the schools get. So what we did is we rented our schools that were surplus, but we kept ownership of them. Smartest thing, and it wasn't just us. I mean, Middlesex County did pretty much the same thing. So I think we have to be really cautious and look way ahead and have the schools be looking way ahead at what the dips and the rises are. But those schools that we rented, we made a lot of money renting them. And we were very grateful that we held them. So I think the Lawrence School is so appealing because of its proximity, but then you have to weigh what's the cost of building a new school if the properties are being rented, they're doing well, but then the school population numbers increase, which is, I think, what we would like to see happen. I don't think we want to just be a senior community, because if we wanted that, we could move into a senior community that provides.
No, you're absolutely right, which is why part of our thought is not to take a building away, but to replace a building. And to your point, we know it's expensive. But if you know, and again, we're not expert developers. Again,
Right.
turning that over to the professionals to just take a look, there's a value to that property. There is state money available. Can it be done? I don't know. Is it worth looking at? I think so.
I think everything is worth looking at.
Because you're right, the goal would be to raise the family population, you know, and we know that the superintendent is very specific about the space that is needed for the schools. We're not looking to take anything away. We're looking for what's best for our teachers and students as well as for homeowners.
Exactly.
So it's for everybody. It's got to be a win-win or it doesn't make sense.
are there members of the public that would like to comment on this subject? I recognize a lot of you from the things that are coming up a little later, so we might have to be moving on. Paul or John? John?
Yeah, I'd like to say that over the past few years, the planning board was able to pass the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. And to this point, we've had approximately 50 applicants approved. And so in its own way, that's affordable housing. We had a housing production study done a few years back, and it said we needed approximately 500 more units in the town of Falmouth. And the town decided that most of those should be apartments, rentals. And since then, we've had a little over 100 affordable apartments built and occupied. The town passed our mixed residential commercial overlay district, as you said, on the sewer. And in the first year, we've approved one development on Main Street for 15 apartments. They haven't been built yet, but it's approved.
Great.
Kimco came in front of us, and I think we would easily approve their 150 apartments. They're currently at the Cape Cod Commission under review, and also discussing with the town how to handle the sewer hookup. But that's 165 apartments approved in the first year of that bylaw, or could be approved. And I think once other property owners understand the value of it and the easiness of it, and the fact that town wants to have apartments built in this town now in certain locations, that will also get used more, substantially more. And at town meeting, unfortunately, we had part of that bylaw was going to include other villages in the town of Falmouth. And part of the bylaw included treatment of the nitrates in the wastewater of those locations, not on the sewer. And unfortunately, it didn't pass town meeting by one vote. But if it went back in front of the town, it would be nice to have apartments in East Falmouth or Wacoit or North Falmouth.
In North
or
Falmouth,
West
yeah, I remember that.
Instead of, and I'm not saying it would be used a lot, but I don't know how much it would be used if the opportunity was available.
Sure.
So I think that the planning board and the town have been very proactive for affordable housing. And just the 100 that have been built, and that's in 4 locations, we've had 100 affordable apartments built and occupied. And the 150 that Kimco's proposed, the other 15, the 50 accessory dwelling units, and we get almost one application a week for accessory dwelling units. It's going to continue to grow. I think over time, the town of Falmouth is going to make a big dent in our housing problem here. But housing doesn't happen overnight. You know, you have the idea, you apply, you get it approved, and then you construct it. You know, that could take 2 years.
Sure.
So it takes a fair amount of time. So I'm really excited about what the town is doing. And Charlotte talked about maybe raising taxes, or, you know, it's been part of the conversation, but a lot of these applicants have come in front of our Community Preservation Committee for funding. So what we've been doing is putting millions of dollars out into the community for these apartments. And so if we have a for-profit developer that comes in and they do a 40B, they have to do 25% affordable. And they're reaching out to the town and saying, if we do the other 85 or the other 75% affordable, deed restricted, will the town contribute some funding to that? And the town is, and through the committee, Community Preservation Committee, we've been doing that. So we're basically buying more deed restricted affordable units for really a very, very small amount of money. But that's taxpayer money. Community Preservation Committee is taxpayer. It comes off of our real estate taxes, and then the state contributes a fair amount of that also. So a lot has happened, and a lot is happening for affordable housing in the town of Falmouth. I can't speak for other towns, but I think over
Absolutely,
I think over the next few years, you're going to see more and more.
And we hope so, and we want to be part of that conversation. And you're right, the ADU and the other things you noticed that you've mentioned absolutely are adding we think that we want to just keep the conversation going forward and looking forward.
Oh, I agree.
Absolutely.
I
So-
agree with that.
And really, I can tell you, Falmouth is light years ahead of so many of the towns on the Cape. We're really doing an outstanding job.
I just want to put a word of caution that we need to consider, and the planning that we've done, we've really tried to keep Falmouth the way it is. And I think to move a huge institution of a school 2 or 3 miles and relocate a whole down center and moving it by the high school is really engineering the whole town. And moving the town hall out to another area is re-engineering it. I think what makes Falmouth great is the kids can walk to downtown. It always has been. I think we're going to be real careful about moving major institutions 2 or 3 miles away from the center of town, because then you're creating a whole new town, and we've always tried to preserve our village center the way it is. And those 2 moves of town hall out to T-Ticket and the junior high out to the high school are major changes of the way the town's gonna be, and then you build linkages around it and highways and schools and fire departments, you're changing the whole town. I think I'd be real careful. I like all the other ideas where we need the housing, but that's major re-engineering to do those massive moves.
John?
I just want to say one more thing, that with the bylaws that we passed, accessory dwelling units, mixed residential, commercial overlay district, we're trying to target where we want housing to go, especially rental housing. And you spoke earlier in your talk about the company that wants to do apartments on Sandwich Road. And all I know is what I read about in the paper, 300 units or 600 units or 900 units. And I would just ask, who would want to have 300 apartments built in their neighborhood? I mean, that's a residential neighborhood. And with our mixed residential commercial overlay district, we're trying to target where we want housing, rental housing to be. And it's easy to say that it's going to be nice, it's going to be, but 300 or 600 or 900 apartments in your neighborhood? Who wants that? I mean, it's just not right. With a 40B, unless the town has enough affordable housing, we can't really protect against that. Or if we have like 75 or 85 building permits per year, then the town can turn that down for a year or 2 years or whatever. But we really want housing to be where we want it to be. Rental housing. And so as not to lose the character or the flavor of this wonderful community.
Sure.
So we think we can do both, and
I hope you can. But we're here because we think we have some good ideas. I'm grateful that you've given us the opportunity to hear us. We're not going to agree on everything, and we're not saying we know what's right, but we have a responsibility to speak on behalf of our members, businesses, other community members who are members of the chamber. And although I do applaud what you're doing, and I like those numbers, and they seem fairly impressive, we feel with all due respect that we can look at other things and move forward. And I can't comment on the Saxon property, because I know about as much about it as you do. And the only comment back to Jim is, I would agree with you if that was an elementary school the kids walked to, but my kids drove to that junior high school from North Falmouth. And when you go by there in the morning, you tell me how many school buses are sitting out there. So I understand your point, but the problem is it also conflicts with the fact that you're also, to John's point, you've picked the areas that you want to put these apartments and rentals, which is downtown. So we got a little bit of a love-hate thing going on here with the school, and I understand that. It brings an emotional response, and that's good. And I think people should have that conversation and just kind of look at everything. So again, I don't know, I'm not a developer, but we're only here saying that we think everything should be on the table until it's deemed not viable.
This board member hasn't had a chance to comment. Paul?
Yeah, thank you. Michael, thank you for coming in and talking about this. It's a big issue. But as John indicated, you're a little bit preaching to the choir, because we've been pushing this, and I encourage you to do other groups. One of the things that's occurred in town here is a lot of different people doing affordable housing. And Carla Ferroni came as a housing coordinator, did a very good job, and she marshaled through the housing production plan, which is kind of the guidance document we're using. A lot of people coming before us ignore that plan, and they're proposing things that don't fit with the plan as developed by the town. And then we're also interested in the character of the town and what we do. That's part of our responsibility. Now, I'm not going to get into specific projects because it's not necessary, But for example, there's a lot of affordable housing projects here in town that are more than 50 years old. The property is owned by the state, federal government, and the town in some cases. I don't hear any discussion on improving those properties or expanding those properties where there's already an ownership issue that we don't face in other areas. So I don't even see that part of it being handled. But the one project, 900 units, that is just, I don't know what that is, but once something comes before us as a 40B, we lose a lot of control over what we can do with the local conditions here in town. So I'm not going to belabor this anymore, but I appreciate you coming in.
No, thank you, Paul. I appreciate your comment.
And Morse Pond is downtown.
It is. There are a lot of other things downtown, and it was good. If what you wanted to do is
Thank you.
provoke a discussion, you can tell that you have.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you all, really. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate all your good work. Thank
I'd
you.
like to say that Bob Muscali is planning to have a forum on a housing issue. Did you want to talk about that for a minute, Bob?
Well, just that Falmouth,
I'll swap with you.
just that we're planning a TV show with Falmouth Cable TV, talking about the accessory dwelling unit. Jed and Charlotte have both agreed to be participants. We're also going to have someone from a local bank talking about how to finance it and move forward with it. So that'll be later this month on Falmouth Cable TV. I just want to mention that, and as I'm sure most, if not all of you know, the issue of housing is the prime issue that the Cape Cod Commission is looking into. There's a lot of information on their website. They've done a marvelous job with studies, and I commend you to take a look at what they have. And at some point in the near future, I'd like to come before you and give a little bit of an update on what is going on at the commission. So,
We would enjoy that. We'd all learn from it. Thank you.
thank you.
And Michael, thank you again. That was really informative, and you've got a lot of guts. I will give you credit for that. Thanks. Okay, moving along on our agenda. Next, we have a planning board decision. The applicant is Nika Development LLC, a continuation site plan review application for an increase in parking and an increase of over 500 square feet in gross floor area at 263 Old Main Road in North Falmouth. We held a hearing on this. We had a discussion on it, and now we came to a determination, and now we have a motion to make. But I'd like to say first, for those of you who are listening and for the board's purpose, I hope you've had a chance to take a look at it. This is the draft that has all the colors on it, red at the top, blue, and so forth. You recall what we were trying to do was somewhat simplify for people listening and for ourselves the approval process. When we finally get to approving something, we're reading at times 3 pages, densely paragraphed, that's practically incomprehensible to take in that kind of information in that way. And we've tried to make it simpler and yet make it very, very clear what we're approving. And of course, there are legal requirements around how we do this. So Jed, Melinda, they have worked on how can we do this, simplify it, make it clearer, and yet still meet all of our requirements. So this is our first run-through on that. So the plan is that the reader, which probably will be Bob, as it often is, will make a motion, and then Jeb will ask us to whether or not we agree with the findings. And the hope is that we will have read all the findings, decided privately for ourselves in advance whether we agree or wish to amend the findings, which are in just the black and white. And we can change them if we want and make a note of that. And then move on to the conditions. We do need to read the conditions. And saying that something's a standard condition isn't sufficiently informative as far as our legal counsel is concerned. So what you see here in blue, we have to actually read aloud into the minutes. But the whole document automatically becomes part of the record. So no matter what we read, what mistakes in reading we make or anything, this becomes part of the record. So it's not as if we could drive off the road and crash. That won't happen. So let's give it a try. So Bob, if you could read the motion.
Okay, Draft, December 28th, 2022, Section 240-12.2, Site Plan Review, 259 and 263 Old Main Road. Motion, I make a motion to approve the application of Nika Development LLC to raise the existing single-family dwelling and barn and replace them with 2 residential duplex buildings and a single-family home at 259 and 263 Old Main Road under Section 240-12.2, Site Plan Review with conditions.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
The motion has been seconded.
Discussion. So now you can ask the board if everyone's read the findings and is comfortable with them. If everyone's comfortable, you can move on to conditions.
And could we just say as a preface, that the way these are written up, the findings that we're going to either agree with or not, they address the requirements for site plan review, and they find that the applicant is in compliance. That's the point of the findings. Okay, so moving forward. Now, whether or not the board agrees or wishes to make changes or modifications to the findings. Anyone want to make any changes? Have you had a chance to review them? I know it's a new process. I guess we're good with the findings as they are written. Nice job, thank you. And the conditions, Bob?
Conditions. 1, the plan shall be constructed as approved. 2, the applicant shall obtain approved driveway permits and post any required bond. 3, the project shall not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public right-of-ways. 4, construction of this project shall follow the town's soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions document. 5, upon completion of construction, the applicant shall post the address for this residence per the town code, section 99-1, affixing of legible numbers required, time limit for compliance. 6, prior to the removal of any trees in the Old Main right-of-way, will need approval from the tree ward.
And now we will vote on whether or not we are going to approve the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. The motion is approved. And the planning department then notifies the applicant,
Correct.
and that concludes the process. So they can go ahead with the planned residential duplex buildings and single-family home on Old Main Street in North Falmouth. Okay, so, just for a moment, what do you think of the new process?
It's fine with me.
Like it? You like it? Yeah, I like it too. Thank you very much. Well
So
done.
what you're saying is gold star.
Yeah, gold star.
Double gold star.
Yep. Excellent, okay. Moving on. Next, we have what many people out there are waiting for, a public meeting continuing on Blue Moon Sea Grill, site plan review application to develop a Class 1 restaurant with outdoor deck located at 159 Main Street. This is the third time this meeting has given time to a public meeting on this topic. Who will be speaking now? We have received letters from lawyers on both sides of this issue. We received a letter from the town council, a memo from the town council, just before this meeting, and I'm not sure the members of the board have had a chance to absorb this. Did you want to walk us through that?
I just want to highlight to you that that is subject to client attorney privilege, so it's something that the board should consider on their own, and the merits of that, so I would advise not to read it into the record. It is for your consideration and your consideration only.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
this was not sent to us in the package, this is just here tonight?
Correct, it came.
Okay,
Right, it
I
just-
thought I
no, it
had
just
seen
came.
everything, okay.
I do know that other boards
for a
often
minute.
will take a vote as to whether or not to release it, so.
Yeah, can you wait a minute so the board can take a look at it?
I had read everything but this, so I need a
Yeah,
minute. Is this it? Yeah.
I read it.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, this one here, okay.
So,
Okay, when I see you lift your heads, I'll know we're ready to go. Are we all set?
Pam?
Okay, Kevin, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I was just making the point that I know with the zoning board, when they receive town council opinion, they will often take a vote as to whether or not they want to release it to council for the applicants or abutters, just so that we sort of know what the playing field is. That was my only point.
Ah, okay.
For the record, Kevin Clower, I am here tonight representing Blue Moon Sea Grill. I am covering for my colleague Bob Ament, who could not make it this evening. So I do not have Bob's depth of knowledge on this particular matter. I'm passingly familiar with it. I will do my best to address any questions or concerns. I believe a lot of this information has been presented to this board on a number of occasions, and there was some correspondence that came in recently. So I'm here to do give it the old college try, so to speak, on Bob's behalf. As was noted, there was a letter submitted recently, just responding to correspondence from Attorney Downey. A lot of it's the same information that this board's seen, going over whether or not that's an established way and whether or not there are any rights. It's our position that that's not an established way, and certainly not for the benefit of 137 Main. We provided multiple title examinations confirming that conclusion, and beyond that, it's not really our responsibility to prove a negative. The abutters do have a recourse available to them relative to that potential way, which is outside of this venue. To date, they have not done so, nor have they established what we see as the prima facie evidence of having a prescriptive easement, including lack of continuous use. The current owner, for instance, has blocked that way for over 4 months during the construction process. At the request of this board, we did submit potential draft plans showing a reduced deck, bringing it down to 70%, but as was noted in correspondence, whether it's 70% or 74%, really makes no difference for the abutters, because the way would be blocked in either event. The Historical Commission did approve the larger deck, which would be preferable for us both aesthetically and functionally. And you have received a correspondence from Attorney Kirk, which states that Devon LLC is open to allowing a license for trash removal through the way between 131 and 133 Main, and that was submitted to the board. And beyond that, I think it's worth noting that, this is a Class 1 restaurant, which is a by right use in this district. But for the pitch of that, of the ground alongside the building, we wouldn't be requesting a deck, nor would require a special permit from the zoning board or the planning board. I think we've submitted significant and more than sufficient information that this plan complies with site plan review requirements as well as special permit requirements. The position of the abutters is based on speculation with no real evidence, such as flooding and interference with town sewer, neither of which are correct. They're simply trying to preserve something they have no actual legal right to. We believe the board has more than enough information to render the decision for both the site plan and the special permit.
Any questions from the board? John?
Yes, one thing, I don't see it on the plans, and maybe you can't speak to this, but there was discussion at one point about a set of stairs being built from the parking lot to the area past where the proposed deck would be built. And I thought that was a great idea. So I don't see it on the plan, but I would like to see that. And secondly, I don't see any reason for a special permit here. They give us the new plan that shows what could be done by right. There's a difference of 2 tables. And so I would be in support, wholly in support of this application, but not the special permit.
Any other comments? Hey, Kevin, I'm surprised you didn't bring up the license that's been given to you by, I've forgotten their name, Dacon?
I did mention that.
Did you?
Yes.
I didn't quite pick up on it.
I mumble sometimes.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely.
Let
So
me.
if you could just
There
review
was
that.
correspondence included in, that was submitted to you from Attorney Kirk, noting that Deben LLC, which is the Osteria, is open to granting a license for trash removal through the way between 131 and 133 Main Street.
Right, and the ability for access to be able to get that
Yes.
trash is a
Yes.
very major issue there.
So
That's been
that's been
resolved.
addressed.
Right. I was interested, I have heard since last we were together, I have heard a bit of the history of that area, and correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently the building that is now a residential building had at one time been a printing company, is that correct?
Handle printing.
Right, it was a printing company, and in order to turn it into a residence, a special permit had to be granted in order to have a residence right in the middle of a business district. So I at least am persuaded that people knew that it was a business district. They sort of have to accept that its primary purpose was to be a business district, which of its nature tends to be congested, tends to be crowded not only with cars and people, but with the service trucks coming and going. That's the nature of a business district. And this is the prime business district of the town. And that's the way it is. I'm sympathetic to the people who are living there now, but that's what the area is. And it is a by right use that's being requested of this board. So that's where we are. I'd really like to move on to the one issue that we haven't really looked at very carefully, but ought to discuss for a minute. And are there any safety concerns? Because we've looked carefully at the access concerns, the circulation, the suitability of this proposal for the area. What do you think of the safety concerns here?
Charlotte, may I ask a question? Because
Fire
are you on the
department,
public meeting portion, or are you on the public hearing?
Well, it's a meeting. If they wish to contribute to this conversation, they should on that subject.
On the public meeting, right here, first, okay. Because last time we kind of combined the two, I think. I may be wrong.
We
Charlotte,
did.
we do have something for the fire department on public, that is the public safety issue,
Yes,
isn't
it
it?
is. Could you speak to that?
Oh, they said they didn't see any problem.
Right. Because we had wondered about it. We asked for their comment. They have commented. They don't see a problem.
Yeah, and to Pat's point, I think they're commenting on the lot coverage special permit request.
We're getting
So we may want
confused.
to, I realize it's the same property, and so we're trying to keep them separate, but the first is the site plan review, and then the second item on the agenda would be the special permit request. So you may want to just stick to the site plan review, the four corners of that, and then if you want to move on to the special permit discussion with the lot coverage request, you might want to do that secondary.
Board members, do you
But it's
feel?
up to the chair.
Whatever you want.
Whatever I want. Okay. Is there anyone who'd like to add to what's been said in the public hearing that hasn't been said before?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Mary Downey for the abutters in the way. I have someone who's going to help me again with my images here. And we'll just do the best we can. So I think that photo that we had the last time was really good. This. This is clear and clear. Sorry, not photo. Plans and photos. There. The right way. Trying to see. This one was today. 1948. Yeah, Benjamin Harris. Yes, that's it. That's pretty good for, just for a minute. I'll ask you to change it. So just, Madam Chair, to speak to your notice of the condominium being a home that has chosen to be there in town, you can see on this project, on this, that there was a house there, and that had always been there. Actually, that had been moved from the front. That was on Main Street, and it was moved back. And it was always a mixed use, that the building that is now in the middle had housing on top. We did look into that. It was always a mixed use. There is presently now someone else living in the McDonald property in the back. And just to tell you, on the licenses, there is no license granted yet by Debon. It is a proposed license that Attorney Kirk has acquiesced to trash only. And if you read that carefully, Debon can withdraw that license at any time. It's a revocable license with 30 days' notice, if she doesn't want to keep it. So that's number one. McDonald's also have not granted a license. They signed individually, the father and the son, that they would consider a license. And we don't know if they can do that because that 15-foot shared way is between 137 and the McDonald property only. They're the only ones with that deeded access. So legally, it's questionable whether that can happen. You also have an assessor's map, and I might be able to get to it before the end of this, from 1947, and the Hewins Way has been there. And you can see that's where, I'm not mistaken, going by the old schoolhouse, but rather right up against the building, there is a car that you can see, and there's a truck behind, and what you were talking about, the printing building, is the one that is right here. That was Kendall Printing. And the Enterprise, Falmouth Enterprise, was in front of it. So there was a lot going on there. It was a busy area for newspapers and printing. So what we still have left here is, it is a way system. I also would request the town council's opinion for you to vote and release the town council's opinion so that we can review it. I don't know if you want to do it tonight or at another time. But at the first meeting, the assistant town planner had said that she was sending it to town council, and I just got information tonight that it was here. So we are interested in their opinion and recommendations. What I haven't heard is that this is an expansion of the use and footprint, and that you would have to go over all of the site plans requirements, including the change in use and the expansion, and whether it's by right or not, you have to have access and circulation. The access and circulation requirements of the bylaws have not been met. I don't want to go into parking too much here, but every other restaurant on Main Street that has come up has some, and particularly in this case, this applicant has asked for exceptions for water, exceptions for parking, exceptions for blocking the way. They've asked for, and they've come up with every contortion to meet some sort of requirement, but it still doesn't meet. It leaves a very dangerous situation. This degrades rather than improves the area. It degrades it because it takes fire and safety away. It degrades it because it adds congestion to an already very congested area. They are saying that they're going to load from the front when they actually had 2 doors in the back that would be perfect for loading. So who's going to police this once it's done? And if they have people coming and going from one side of the way only, it'll just make for more congestion, more chaos, to something that is stable right now. And it's gone from a 4 or 5 person Vincent's Associates to a 130-seat restaurant. So you basically, we've asked for a parking study for this access and congestion issue, and we have not heard anything about that. So it doesn't improve the site from, this is my client's perspective. The dumpster is in a wetland. You do have maps that show that behind that building is a wetland. If you get a heavy rain, you're going to have these dumpsters sitting for a week in water. We're not talking about civil disobedience here. We are talking about property rights and private property rights and shared property rights. So that's on the site proposal. I'm trying not to speak to the special permit just yet. Is that fair?
Up to the chair.
Up to the chair.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep them separate right now if we can. Thank you.
Okay. So I do know that you do have, from Scott Schuler, the DPW, you have an inspection of the site, and he has many concerns. Usually, if you were to have something extinguishing or blocking a way, you would have to come up with an alternative to that way. Even these little beach paths, if someone's going to block it, they have to come up with an alternative. It seems to me that the applicant has not met his burden. Instead, he has put the burden on my clients to prove what anyone who's lived in town knows that has been here, that way has been here, and that the assessor's map always shows Hewan's Way. In fact, when they first cut the way by La Civetta, that was also called Hewan's Way. And it just depends on what plans you're looking at. And again, it was meant to be a system, and this will be destroying the system, and it will be degrading the neighborhood. And let's see, I just have one other map I'd like to show you. There's no way I can see a,
These are ones
it's,
that
oh, assessors magnified right there.
so that one doesn't work.
Yep.
So
Oh, it won't work?
it's okay. There's a couple of different copies.
Okay, so this is the zoomed in image, but it is sheet 47 in the assessor's office. And you can see right here, right off of Main Street, before the property was subdivided in the middle, and before that way was put in across the middle. So there's a way here that you will be extinguishing, and there's a way down by La Civetta. Can you all see that? The way that is by the old Vincent's goes back to about 1910. The way by what is now La Civetta is we can get it to about 1925, 1926. So you are extinguishing something that has been part of the Falmouth landscape for quite a long time with this expansion of use. And it does seem that with the expansion of this building footprint, that the requirements are not being met. There must be parking, loading standards, everything that I wrote in my letter this week. And the access and circulation, I think, is what is the most troubling, that you are cutting off. They would have access. Also, there's constructing within the site. There's not any room here to do this construction contained on that site.
Ms. Downing, could I just ask you a question?
Yes, sure.
How have the residents that you're representing been getting in and out to their condos? Well, the construction went on for the building,
For which building?
the one that Blue Moon is renting.
Well, actually, Blue Moon used Sarah's through that whole, used Devon through that time. But Sarah, when she was doing her construction, used Vincent's. So it has been a cooperative way all along. It has been a cooperative system.
But they were blocked from using the way nearest to the town parking for a long time. I wonder how they got in and out.
I'm sure that they had to use the only available way.
Right, and the trash people use the only available way.
They have come to use that way. However, you're still cutting off what is a safety, and fire has not weighed in on this site plan.
I'm just talking about access, not,
Right, well,
I saw a
access
letter
and
from the fire
circulation.
department. Are we missing that? It has not been communicated here? We're talking two different things.
So
Access, fire, safety.
the fire department said that they would deal with any fire issue dealing with Blue Moon from the parking lot of the town, was their response. So
Well,
they
is
said
Blue
they did
Moon
not
the-
see a problem
Is Blue
with
Moon
this
the only
plan.
one that's going to have a potential fire? It could be anywhere.
I'm just
So-
saying what the fire department was asked about the safety issue with this applicant's plan, and that was their response, and we'll just have to let it go at that.
Well, my
And the
understanding
access
is,
actually will be unchanged.
my understanding is that that went to the special permit, not to the site review.
Madam Chair, if I may. So you are correct. The official referral that we got from the fire department was related to the lot coverage question, and they indicated that they didn't have an issue with the lot coverage itself. As I reported at the December meeting, I had spoken to a representative of the fire department just before the meeting to get their sense for the way that is proposed to be blocked by the deck, whether or not that would ever be used for fire prevention purposes. And they indicated that they would never use that. It's way too tight for the fire engine to get down. They would use the other way.
So
the
that is
Devon
speaking
way.
to the access issue.
They would come in by La Chavetta, tight squeeze, but they would be able to come in that way. In fact, they indicated that they had previously done that in the past.
Right.
So that would be the primary way that they would access the back portion.
So they did address the access. Thank you. I have another question for you, Jed. Here at the top of what we've received from the Office of the Town Council, is subject to attorney-client privilege and work product doctrines. Does that mean we are prohibited from sharing it?
You are absolutely not prohibited, if it is the vote of the board to release that to the
Because
attorneys
I
who've
would be
requested it.
inclined to release it myself, and I wonder, just in the interest of everyone knowing the same thing, I wonder how the rest of the board feels about that.
I don't have a problem with it.
John?
I don't have a problem with it,
Yeah.
no.
I guess not. I don't know, I just thought, go ahead.
I'd rather not.
You'd rather not. Paul?
I don't think it adds to the discussion at all at this time, so I don't know why we'd release it. If they consider it client privilege, I think we have to go back to the attorney who wrote it. I don't think it's our vote to override it.
But apparently it is our vote to override it.
So I spoke to Associate Town Council before the meeting. He indicated that he's available to discuss it with you, perhaps the chair, the reasons for why you may want to hold on to it and reasons why you may want to release it.
So I would defer to what
Perhaps
Jeb would recommend.
just recommending that you not vote tonight, but perhaps at the next hearing to release it, or if you're so
Good, once we
inclined.
have that opinion, because we'll just see. I would suppose, this is just a supposition, I'm certainly not a lawyer, they're thinking that if the town is ever, if we make a decision and it's ever appealed, is that the issue? That would be the issue.
You know, I'm not an attorney either, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay, we'll find out between now and the next
So we're
meeting.
not gonna
'cause
end
I
this
think-
tonight anyways,
No,
right?
we're not.
Okay, then it
So
doesn't
let's-
matter.
Yeah, I think we've
I thought
heard
we'd
as
get it
much
over with, that's
as we
why.
could on, as far as the hearing is concerned, on the site plan issue, and we are not making a decision tonight. We are waiting for further advice. So let's move on from the hearing to now,
From the meeting.
sorry.
Sorry,
From the meeting to the hearing.
meeting, to the hearing.
To the hearing.
But wait, we're not ready. Do you want to speak first as part of the hearing?
Well, yeah,
Oh.
are you going then to the special permit hearing?
Yeah,
Or
I
are we
was.
tabling it all tonight?
If others want to speak, I just assume we hear them, but I'm ready to move on.
Okay, well, I haven't spoken to the special permit, so
And Madam
I'm
Chair,
going to hold off on that.
I
And
apologize.
please go ahead.
I just have some questions on site plan review if we could, before we
Oh,
move on.
okay.
Hi, I'm Davies Millet, one of the co-owners of the 137. Last meeting, I heard that registered letters have been sent out to all abutters. We've never received one. Was that just said for the cameras? We're within 60 feet. We never received any notification of these meetings. The only way we found out about them is from the Falmouth Enterprise. Timber's been operating entertainment without an entertainment license all summer. I mean, you just do stuff, and then if you get caught, what happens? Why didn't we get a letter?
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, because someone didn't send it.
I'd like to speak to that. We did send a letter to everyone on the abutters list.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to see who was on the abutters list, you're
Well, no,
more
we're
than
not in a
welcome.
butter, so we don't share a property line, but within 100 feet for the historic, 300 for the planning
On the
board.
abutters list, it's
We're
everyone
60
within
feet away.
300 feet.
We're 60 feet away from the project.
You were sent an abutters list. You were sent a notice. You might want to check with the assessor's office to make sure you have the correct mailing address on file.
Right to the house.
I don't know what's on our abutters list for your mailing address. However, we did send it out to everyone.
Certified, you have to sign for
You
it.
don't have to send it certified.
Last
It's by
meeting-
regular mail.
It said it was sent certified at the last meeting. All the letters have been notified by certified mail.
It did
That's
not
what
say
was
that.
said.
Okay, I'll have to look back at
Okay.
the tape because I don't recall that being said.
Yeah, it was. I just remember listening to it.
I'll look at it.
Also, when I had the thing signed, I had someone sign the petition. It was a 78-year-old man from Falmouth, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Human's Way." I mean, it has a name. It's an established way. You're going to extinguish it. A police car can make it down that alley. An ambulance can make it down that alley. You have a letter from Kerry Marzot. They have a giant Ford Expedition. They used to exit that way. The only time that has been impeded that I've heard of is when Vincent changed the windows. When they changed the windows. That's the only time it's been impeded. And opposing counsel brought that up. And I mean, someone said they don't want to change the downtown because you don't want to change the school into housing. Well, this is going to change the downtown. How realistic do you think it is satellite parking? Do you think an employee, if they pull up for a 7-hour shift and there's a spot right next, they're going to be, I'm going to go drive a mile away and get a ride into work? No, they're not. They're just going to park right in the parking lot. Be real. Come on. Right? Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we requested a copy of that petition. Did we ever receive that?
I don't believe we ever received that.
Yes, you did.
We did.
From my people, and
I've not
we
seen
have
it.
all the
I stand
papers
corrected.
covered. Everything was submitted this week. I was hoping.
Apologies.
Did
Because
we
Paul was
see it?
saying that we didn't
We
receive it.
didn't see it.
Well, the file is very thick, so the correspondence are always available for the board
I
members.
could have gone and looked at it if I wanted to, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Can I say something here?
Yes, just, Paul.
You know, we've been listening to this for a long, long time. This area has been a problem for a long time, long before Longfellow bought that property. It was changed from a printing building to apartments. There were 3 or 4 dumpsters back there. It was really a mess to go there. It was difficult to even travel along this way. What we're talking about here is getting the neighborhood to get together and work to make this area much better. And what I'm hearing is that Bogosian's willing to do that, and the Italian restaurant's willing to do that, but we're arguing something with a 50-year-old plan that has really no relevancy to what we're talking about. So I just don't understand why we wouldn't work a little bit together to try to resolve this problem. You look at pictures, there's cars parked all over the place. It doesn't make any sense. The people who live there are not even paying attention to the right-of-way. I mean, we have someone who worked in that building for 40 years saying it was rarely used. I mean, fire department doesn't use it, the dumpster certainly doesn't. So why don't we just work out a way to get a shared dumpster and a shared area of parking so that we can resolve this issue for everyone and make that improvement in the back area? That's what we're really talking about. Instead, we're arguing about spurious issues that really, in my opinion, are not terribly relevant to what we're trying to do. To make that a restaurant, they need an access, handicapped access. It's the only access they can have in that area. They can't go up the front steps. We can reduce the number of tables outside, and that does away with the special permit, but it doesn't do away with the blocked area. That's a legal issue. That's beyond the scope of this particular board. But I fail to see why we can't sit down and work something out for the benefit of everyone. I think it's doable. Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Just a few points in response. The nature of the license was noted in our correspondence, and we in fact suggested a condition that in the event there was ever a change in that license, they would have to submit an alternative arrangement to the planning board. The McDonald's can grant access over their land, not just over their right-of-way, their portion of the right-of-way. They can grant us access over their actual land, which is what they've agreed to do. They've agreed to provide a license, and have signed that as managers of the LLC. To Mr. Dreyer's point, the photo is not evidence of a way. It shows a car parked next to a building. The dumpster is not in a wetland, it's in a flood zone, the same as my office, the same as town hall, the same as the bowling alley, the same as the existing building is in. The only exception we've actually requested is relative to parking, which is specifically allowed in the B1 district on Main Street. And really what you've heard from the abutters is speculation. There's nothing with evidence, it's speculation. The speculation now for their rights, which we've shown don't exist. There's speculation over what the possible effects of this might be. There's speculation over flooding, which we've established isn't going to occur because we're replacing existing parking with gravel. And just because there's a way shown on a plan or having a name, it doesn't actually convey rights to use it to anyone. There's 2 parties that had rights to use this way, the coin shop and what is now owned by Wendy Gelfie, both of whom have agreed to allow this deck to be in that way. Absent a specific grant, there is no right in that way. So I agree with Mr. Dreyer. I think we're belaboring a point that doesn't necessarily need to be belabored in front of this board. I think that we've shown that we've met the requirements, or the standards rather, for site plan review. And we'd be happy to move it forward if this board would see fit.
Okay, and the fact is, we're not changing the drainage at all.
I think we're improving the drainage because they're going to be
Right.
removing pavement and installing
Putting in
gravel under the deck.
Right. So it's,
Madam Chair, if I may?
yes, please.
So there's a couple of points. The proposed site plan you have in your packet technically doesn't match the landscaping plan. So what I see on the landscaping plan indicates that the concrete set of steps that would allow someone from the sidewalk to access that way would be removed, and that would be covered with new plantings. And I believe they're going to fill in the retaining wall that's currently there, a section of it. So I would advise, or I would recommend that the site plan that the applicants provided indicate that change on the plan itself. Then I think the board should probably discuss with the applicant the idea and maybe firm up the agreement for staff parking to occur off-site. I know it was floated as an option. I don't know if that's a commitment by the applicant, and if that could be formalized in some way to indicate number of spaces, number of employees, et cetera, and what that shuttle service might look like, or
So
carpool.
I think there were a few things that were put forth. One, there's been an agreement reached with Vince Jeffroy, right, John, relative to some spots near the harbor. And then there's the additional available town parking that you'd find on Depot Avenue and areas like that. The applicants have indicated a willingness to arrange for employees to park there and to have, a employee or one or two employees park nearby. There is, significant parking in the area. I think we noted the 460 parking spaces within a few hundred feet of this building. So I think that there is a lot of available public parking, but the applicant would be willing to agree to have some number of their staff parking off-site.
But we could condition approval of the site plan on formalizing an arrangement.
Exactly. So that's the reason I bring it up, is I wanted the board to perhaps have a conversation with the applicant about that particular subject and see if there was a willingness to put that in as a condition in your in your decision.
Seems reasonable. Okay, so are we ready to move on from the hearing? Can we?
I have a couple more things. if I
Okay,
may.
go.
So just splitting hair, well, not splitting hairs, but just the landscaping plan doesn't technically have a list of plantings that would be proposed. It looks as though the plantings would be mostly shrubbery. I don't expect, Kevin, for you to be able to answer that, but just want to put it out on the record. Typically, we would have a list of new plantings that they're providing. I know Attorney Downey has mentioned the idea of a parking study or a traffic study. It may behoove the board to, indicate whether or not you agree with that request, or if you feel that one is not needed. I know that you've submitted a letter to the ZBA about the parking study, so I think that's sort of a closed topic, but you may want to just address the need or the potential need for a traffic study. If you don't feel one's needed, we can just note that in our.
It would be novel for this kind of thing for the board to require that of an individual applicant. Is it any member of the board want to speak in behalf of doing that?
No, but can
I
I just
thought I
make
saw something about parking in the package that you sent us
Yeah, from the engineer.
from the engineering department and how it met the downtown.
Right.
I thought that was addressed.
Parking itself, you've addressed it as well. You've sent your correspondence to the ZBA indicating that you don't feel.
Trips, it was trips. Sorry, it was
This is a
trips.
trip generation.
But that's like parking. I thought that's what he meant.
Right.
Traffic, that's a traffic.
Traffic, right.
I think the traffic issue was addressed in the information that was, that you sent, I saw it.
I think so too. And we said that it would not be, we haven't required it
Okay,
of other
all right.
similar applicants. Why would we
Trip
then do this to this
generation.
particular
not
applicant?
exceed 4
And I'm
trips per
persuaded by that, but I wonder about the other
Yeah,
members
that's
of
what I
the
saw.
board.
So
Yeah.
just for the record, technically that's for the special permit requirement. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
They're very
I merged them
intertwined.
together.
Yes, they're merging together and separating themselves. So that requirement was a requirement to be filed for the special permit. But because the attorney has asked for a traffic study, I just think the board perhaps should discuss that and indicate whether or not you agree or disagree, so we can note it in the draft decision.
Can I ask a question? Is there enough traffic to study?
It would be the additional traffic created by the restaurant.
Correct.
Additional to,
What's already there, bringing in a restaurant with such a large number of tables, plans for seating, would change the traffic and the parking situation there, and that's what we would study.
I have some questions about that, but
Jed, on this plan, the plan that you're discussing about the landscape plan, what I'm drawn to is this, I think this plan, maybe I'm wrong, this plan shows a shorter deck Is that the plan you're talking about?
No.
No. The old plan.
Kevin, you want
The
to click on
original.
the fourth? Yeah, that one. There you go.
That's the shorter deck, no,
that's
okay,
the full
original.
deck.
Proposed deck.
Yep.
This is the plan that you're pointing at now, is the plan that has been approved by the Historical Commission.
Correct.
And so what you'll see is I think it's the third car in, the blue car. Currently, right now, that's approximately where the access from the sidewalk to the way is, and
Yeah.
it's a set of stairs. So again, that's just, you can see it's blocked off.
It says remove concrete pavement, substitute additional wall for existing steps through the wall.
Right.
And so if you scroll up to the proposed site plan, you see the concrete wall, or the walk still there, so it's just a housekeeping item.
And I think what John had been talking about, harking back to a conversation that we had, we moved again, would be move the sidewalk to the left into the green area and make it possible for people to walk through that part of Bogosian's property up some stairs onto the sidewalk that walks along the town parking lot.
I think that would require,
Right, John?
that will require approval from town hall, from the select board.
It would. It would. It's a whole new process that would be introduced there. Is that what you meant, John?
Yes, it's on the plan. He just showed it. Not this one, but he scrolls up. Is that it right there? Oh, no. That's off the deck, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's just showing that's the
Right.
setback.
I thought,
Right, that's the short,
right there, right next to us where the steps would go. That's what Mr. Ahmet proposed possibly doing.
possibly, yeah. Did you have further things you wanted to bring up as part of the hearing?
As part of the meeting.
Meeting, sorry.
One last item, and it's a question to the applicant. Have you folks investigated the possibility of ADA access through the front door?
I think any ADA access through the front door would require coming into the sidewalk, is my understanding, which has its own ADA requirements for depth. So I think, using the area to the east of the building, trying to orient myself, is the area that really is the only realistic area to use.
Which would be in the way itself?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, well, let's move on from the meeting to the hearing. Okay, now, the applicant again is the Blue Moon Sea Grill, and do we have, well, first we'd read that, and then
Madam
we'd
Chair?
read the public notices.
If I may, just for procedural, you may want to just, as you did before, table the discussion of site plan review. Just come back to the hearing. Because, again, we're moving on, so we would need a date certain if you wanted to continue them, but perhaps just tabling it for now.
I'd like to
and
just table it for now.
being able to talk about the
Second.
hearing.
All in favor of tabling it?
Aye.
Aye, okay, good. Now, public hearing. I think we'll do the applicant, and then we'll do the public notice.
Okay, the public hearing for the Blue Moon Sea Grill was sent by regular mail to abutters. I don't know how many there are.
27.
27 abutters.
Okay. The applicant is Blue Moon Sea Grill Incorporated, special permit application to allow lot coverage of 73.8% to accommodate the restaurant dining deck proposed along the southeast side of the existing building located at 159 Main Street.
May I ask a question of John?
Sure.
Because he's the one who requested what it would look like for 70%. And there was something behind his question there that would include a reduction of a certain number of square feet. It would take away the necessity for a special permit.
Exactly. So it makes the difference of 2 tables. According to the
12 seats.
the other,
Right, and I heard that the applicant was not open to that idea.
I understand that. just think that if they did what they could do by right, then there's a special permit's
It'd be done.
not necessary. that
Right.
It doesn't open the door for an appeal, it does a lot of things, but I don't see the reason for it, so. That's-
Okay. I just wondered
But
if,
that's why I wanted, there was discussion of it. I mean, it's only like 3% or something. I wanted to
Right.
see
Right.
what the value was.
If I may just speak to the application, special permit application in general. Again, for the record, Kevin Clower. Our zoning bylaw, and we're still into the old bylaw at this point, right? This was applied for into the old bylaw?
I mean, you're testing our memory, but
I think
let's go with the old one.
it was, so I'm gonna go 24069D, allows for lot coverage in excess of that set forth in the lot coverage tables, which is 70%. Allows for lot coverage in excess of 70%, provided that, upon receipt of calculations prepared by a professional engineer indicating that stormwater runoff from the site will not be increased following development by more than 10% in a 10-year storm, that the soil loss rate from the site will not be increased above the existing rate by more than 10% following redevelopment, the average summer daily trip generation will not exceed 4 trips per linear foot of lot frontage, and upon the planning board's determination that erosion control methods to be employed during construction will be adequate to prevent excessive soil loss, and that all landscaping and screening requirements will be met. So we did submit calculations provided by Mike Porcelli at Falmouth Engineering, attesting to all of those facts. To Mr. Truly's point, it is a loss of 12 seats, and changing it from 73.8% to 70%. It might only be 3%, but 12 seats over the course of a summer, over the course of a year, amount to a very substantial difference. And I think the special permit could be granted without any real heartburn by the board, bless you, given the fact that we've established all of those factors, and that we're talking about a difference of 3.8%, which, again, small difference, but does add 12 additional seats, which, over the long-term health of a restaurant, does make a difference.
Anyone else wish to comment on the extra 3.8%? Did
If I
you
may.
wish to?
If I may. I just want to just clarify for the record, as Attorney Clower indicated, Falmouth Engineering, Mike Porcelli, did submit a letter indicating compliance with the items that he just read. However, there weren't calculations provided. It was an opinion letter submitted by Mr. Porcelli, and in your engineering referral from Scott Schluter, he did defer the decision to the board as to the adequacy of whether or not they submitted what they were supposed to, essentially. And so I bring that up for your attention because it's important that you weigh in on that as to whether or not you think calculations need to be provided rather than just an opinion letter. So I just want to raise that to your attention.
Any board member want to comment on that? I'll comment on it. It seems to me that Mike Porcelli's letter, yes, we could ask for the calculations in a really surplus of caution, but it's such a tiny percentage that it's entirely believable. And if in some way the applicant were proposing to fill in the space there between the stone wall and the restaurant and change the drainage or make a significant change to it, then maybe we would want calculations in writing and know it perfectly. But in fact, they're not doing that. They're improving the drainage, and that seems to be the main gist of ways that we can find in favor of the applicant, because it's to a small percentage that they're changing it. And I agree with the Historical Commission that aesthetically it will look better like that, and it does not really make a significant difference. So why would we deny the applicant the opportunity to be sure he's going to be able to make his rent all the time for something that doesn't make a significant difference? It doesn't really relieve the people who are against it. It doesn't change their situation significantly, but it does make a change to the applicant that I think is significant. So I would rather go with approving the original design that goes all the way to the end of the building. That's my preference.
And just on the engineering number, if I recall correctly, think you alluded to it, Sharon, the reason why the opinion was given is because common sense tells you when you remove concrete and you put down gravel, you're gonna have a better drainage situation.
Right.
And the road, I just thought the math was clear and didn't need to have any calculus. I thought it was pretty obvious. That's why I
Right.
went along with it.
Just so that we can have it for our notes
Right,
for the, whatever
That was an
decision you make.
important factor, that
Right.
it was stated to removing not
Asphalt.
asphalt.
And other issues that have been raised are not issues that are within our purview. They're not things that we can deal with. So we need to deal with just what we are supposed to be dealing with and let it move on to a place where it can be resolved, that people do have the authorities to be able to address, is it a way or not a way, or whatever. But for the things that are in front of us, my preference would be to approve it as submitted with some conditions. Would any other board member like to speak before we ask for a motion?
Well, we can't approve it tonight.
No, we're not.
Oh,
I'd
okay.
just like to
I
get a
thought-
sense of the board.
Right, no, I think it needs to be kept as they are requesting, but the town also has to weigh in on it.
Yeah,
There-
we're gonna
there
hear
are
from the
certain
lawyer.
conditions there that have to be met.
Well said.
We're all set?
Public comment. Just don't want you to
Public
forget
comment?
that.
So I just find it fitting I'm here, or we're here on the night, Michael Kasparian discusses, the need for housing. He's a great guy. We are here to make sure we're preserving the housing that we have, and then we're not forced into having to change our space into an office. And Charlotte, now I am the fourth person who has a business owner that has bought a property for work, for our workforce. So, and Paul, I want to thank you for your compassion with your speech before, the words you had said before and the compassion involved. So, in regards to this here, with this extra 4%, like if you see that table right there, that's a straight shot. You're ricocheting noise off those buildings. There's a bedroom window right about here. So for us, yeah, it is important that the idea of this coming down a little bit, it creates a little bit of a buffer for some noise for ourselves over there. I mean, you can see this table, the stairs, if people are back there, having a good time, out there, this is going to save some noise for us. So, so that's for us what we're trying to protect, in this regards to the extra 4%. It could save us a whole ton of noise from the noise ricocheting down here. You get people, it's a fun place, people out there and maybe could be noisy. And that, I mean, right where the mouse is pretty much where the bedroom window is. We're really trying to preserve some housing here in town. It is a mixed use, but I mean, in that mixed use, it is for residential as well. And, I just don't want to have to turn it into, something different because it's not inhabitable just because there's too much noise. So, that's my part on it. I'm going to say my words, for the other part for another time. But this is why we're hoping not to have that 4%. It's just this table. Like I said, I mean, I can plug the stick in and show you, the building and how it could bounce off, and lead to some noise. So thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
So I would just like to go to, and I'm using the old book too, the adequacy of the site in terms of size for the proposed use. You are taking the way and putting in an addition. So I and my clients still maintain that the site is too small for what they want to achieve. the suitability for the site is your other next
We're on a special
criteria.
permit now?
We're on special permit.
You're talking site review.
Nope, I'm reading right from
Okay, I thought you were
Special
talking-
Permit 140-216.
Okay, so you're saying-
The old book.
All right, so you're not talking about, I thought you were talking about the site plan.
No, no, I'm talking,
Excuse me, I'm
it's
confused.
adequacy, it's balancing the beneficial effects on the neighborhood, the town, in view of the particular characteristics of the site, and the adequacy of the site in terms of size for the proposed use. This site is too small for the amount of use that they propose. The suitability of the site in the way, again, blocking and permanently blocking the way without any absolute license from McDonald or Dibon. You're referring to two licenses that do not exist. They are proposed, both of them. One is an agreement, and you can't just say they're licenses. They're not. The impact on the neighborhood is significant to my clients. The adequacy for the sewage removal, that's huge. You're going to have a messy, dirty dumpster. You'll have rodents there. If you wait a week, that's what they said, we'll put more dumpsters there and dispose of the refuge once a week. There is a water and drainage problem. We do need calculations. It's simply an opinion of Mike Bruselli going on what Attorney Ament gave to him. There are utility issues. No one has weighed in on the utility issues. Your own DPW says that they would probably have to put 4 boxes, I don't know what those are, underneath the way. So I would just bring your attention, we're having more time after tonight, to Scott Schulter's review and inspection of the site. He brings up the blocking of the way. He is concerned about the reduction being requested on the amount of parking. He covers it all, and he's your inspector. So I think that's basically all for tonight. Does anybody else want to speak to anything? And there's no vote tonight, so I think we've all run out of steam. Is there a vote, or?
It's a true statement.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but, I appreciate all the time you've given to this and all the time that Bob Ament, I'm sorry he's not well, and that Kevin have put into it. We've really, I think, gone over it thoroughly. I know that the departments connected to planning have spent a lot of time on this, and we'll try to wrap it up next time.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I would just note, the conditions Attorney Downey was going over relative to a special permit approval. 240-216 is sort of the catch-all provision in our bylaw that says, in addition to whatever conditions a special permit might have, consider these things too. But what we're talking about is the special permit application. So we're talking about whether we're 70% or 74%. So the site is adequate for this. I mean, it's allowed to be at 70%. That's what we're proposing. We're proposing 74, but even if we weren't to obtain a special permit, we're still going to be at 70, and we're going to end up with the same result, provided this board sees fit to approve the site plan review application. So I understand why I should raise those questions, but it doesn't change the net result here more than 12 seats. I think that we've established that we meet the requirements for a special permit under the specific provision of the bylaw. I think we've established that we meet the requirements for site plan review. I would just ask, I want to make sure I understand our homework, if any, prior to the next hearing. So that's my one request to the board right now, because I know we're talking about another continuance, and I just want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what, if anything, this board is looking for from us. So I know Jed had mentioned clarification on the landscape and the site plan relative to the filling in of the stairs. I I think if it would please the board and, you know, help with the neighbors, I think would be open to seeking stairs at the rear of the building from Town Hall down to what's shown as the green space there. I think that, just going back to Attorney Downey's comments relative to the licenses, those can certainly be conditioned in any decision, that it can be a condition of that decision, that those licenses be obtained and recorded, same as it is for many other decisions that this board and the zoning board issue. But again, just so I'm clear on our homework, clarifying the site plan and landscaping plan, and then trying to get some additional information relative to off-site parking. Was there anything else?
Also showing the dumpster location on the site plan. And if there's going to be any fencing, there was a discussion about dumpster location, fencing, closing it off. Whatever that looks like, just show it on the site plan.
And there's been an issue raised tonight that may have come up before, but I don't think it did, about the part of the deck that wraps around the corner, and noise bleeding off of that into the, if you wanted to think about that. It's not a homework, you don't have to.
Certainly, I
but it
mean,
could be
you know,
useful.
we can certainly look at it. We're not proposing outdoor entertainment or anything of that nature here, but that's certainly something we can take a look at and then let you know how we land on our end.
If we're gonna look at that, I'd also like, Jed, if you could look at what the special permit requires for having a residential use in the business district, and I think there's some language that is appropriate that we should read it. I think it talks about, I'll let you read it and bring the next hearing on that issue. I think it's addressed about the uses and how they're not supposed to affect the business uses.
Okay.
The special permit that's, I think I recall some terms there that should be.
It actually says that the housing, the multifamily housing not be noxious to
That's
the,
what I was avoiding saying,
noxious
but I know it's there.
is the word they
Thank you.
use, to the uses allowed in that district by
That
right.
was my point. He said it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, Pat?
Yeah, there can be noise baffles put up. Also, you see them
This is a
all
business
over the
zone.
place. There was a complaint about the noise
Noise
reverberating.
has got to be dealt with, right.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
they're going to
and
be working
so
on it.
Why don't we put something in there about noise baffling?
I don't know how you do outdoor noise baffling. I see a lot of indoor noise mitigation. I'm not quite sure how, but we can look into it. I'm just not sure how that would
Now,
work.
you run down highways and you see noise baffles.
We have a bylaw that specifically addresses the noise issue, and it needs to be, we're not changing that.
You're referring to the town code nuisance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So are you asking the applicant to investigate noise mitigation?
I'm just wondering if it's possible. I don't know if it is possible or not, but I'm being sensitive to the comment.
The opposite, pretty much.
Often it's done by planting.
Mm-hmm.
So if the dog leg going around the corner, if that section were changed into arborvitae, it would baffle the noise. I mean, there are ways to do it, but the applicant has said they're going to be looking at this and responding to the comment and the concern, not necessarily proposing anything, but thinking about it maybe before the next time we look at it.
That's the only reason I'm bringing it up.
No,
because
it's good.
So we get dumpster fencing, site plan landscape with the stairs to the parking, and consideration as to noise mitigation. Anything else? Just, I want to be,
could do wall
We've never tried to resolve this. I bet we could, Kevin.
I'm just filling in.
I have one
That would do it.
question. Yeah, that, when we were on the site review, there was something with 2 doors on their plan that did say landing, and it actually was about the height that would be just right for loading and unloading, which they have made no provisions for. And at that time, they said, well, we don't need 2 doors. And Bob was there. He said, we don't need 2 doors. We only need 1, because the 2 doors could easily turn into a landing. There's a certain height requirement, and it's right.
I think the board could condition that there be no deliveries to the back, which is what we've discussed and put in testimony
What we're
anyways.
anticipating, right,
Yeah. So that could be a condition of any decision.
right.
That's that's been our testimony throughout.
Paul?
If they're looking for an entertainment license, they don't come here, they go to the select board. And that's where the
They meet on
noise
Monday
issue would be appropriate, I think.
Right, that's what's
Well,
supposed to
but
be.
if we can resolve it here, then let's do it. But I'd like to comment on the suitability. I think it's going to be a wonderful amenity for the town to have a deck there, to have tables right off the street, so that people can walk in easily, walk out easily, overlook the town square that is now sort of building up with sculptures and interesting things there. I think it's more than suitable. It's going to be a really great addition to the town. So we're looking at it differently, but let's close this now, and we're adjourned to what, the 24th, Jed?
The 24th is the next meeting, yes.
24th,
Okay.
and we'll hope to wrap it up then.
Kevin, the only other thing which you brought up the first time, but not the second time when you were going over everything, was just the off-site parking for
okay.
employees.
Charlotte, I just want to mention one thing. I looked over the plan. I said they would eliminate 2 tables, that they do 70%. And the way I look at it, it's going to be 2 tables and then 2 smaller tables, so it would be 12 seats.
Yeah, it'd be a lot,
I was thinking it was 8, it's going to be 12.
yeah.
I just want to correct that.
But it looks here, at least from the drawing, that if they take off just the back dog leg, they're losing 1 table.
Well, on their plan, the new plan they showed us,
But we still need to account for the stairs.
70%.
We need to have the stairs down, so it's still,
They need emergency stairs.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's incomplete up there.
Madam
You
Chair.
look closely, you can see them.
yeah, right here, Charlotte, those are stairs there. So if that were to be
Oh.
removed, we'd need to take up more of the tables with stairs. We would lose more tables by still having to put stairs down.
I just want to say I misspoke. I was wrong.
Oh, okay.
So,
Notes are being taken, not to fear.
It's on tape.
Copious notes.
Yeah,
It's on tape.
okay. So continue to the 24th.
January 24th.
For that.
So what is the
Yeah,
final
for the
code
special
with
permit, yes.
seats?
Okay, if we can have a motion to continue to
I
the
move we
20th.
continue to
Can I just
20th.
ask clarification? Are both the site plan review and the special permit being continued? Are we
44.
largely resolved on the site plan?
I believe we tabled the meeting, and we are continuing the hearing.
Okay.
Well, you can't.
So
But we did.
table the public meeting
You have to talk.
to potentially return to it and
Tonight.
discuss and see whether or not the board's comfortable with issuing a site plan approval.
Right.
Tonight, right?
And the town council letter?
They did
Didn't
not.
address it.
We hear about that.
We didn't address it.
We're
We
gonna
did.
vote it
We
at the
asked
next
for an
meeting.
opinion on it.
You guys can vote at the next meeting whether or not you want to release it,
Depending on what
after
town
you
council says.
talk to town council.
Right.
On the other plan.
So we will hear about it. How will they hear about it? They'll find out here.
Well, they
You'll have to vote.
You
They can
you
come out-
listen to the town council, then we can make a decision. There's some reservations you should listen
Right.
to and find out what they are.
I think we should all listen.
Well, you can tell us.
Two more of these. So it's 44.
We're gonna have a Zoom meeting with them, I don't
Yeah.
care.
So it may behoove you to go back to the site plan review, discuss if you still have concerns with the applicant. If you do not, and you want to direct us to draft a positive motion to that effect, we can do so.
So we're taking it off the table then, right now?
Right.
Well, and there are 2 things that the select board has to weigh in on.
Correct.
Well, that can be a condition.
Right. Both have to be conditioned in here.
So my recommendation would be to continue the site plan review because the applicant still needs to provide those plans with the indication, the items that we talked about until the 24th. But in the meantime, perhaps if you're comfortable, you can ask the planning staff to create some draft findings and conditions for you. And if you're comfortable at the 24th meeting voting to approve, you're prepared to do so.
That would be good. Okay, we all ready to do
Is that relative to both applications or just site plan?
Whatever. they
Technically,
want.
that's site plan, but if you're comfortable, we can provide you a special permit one as well. Again, it's at the direction of the board.
I've heard enough.
I've heard
Yeah.
enough. I've
I've
heard
heard
plenty.
enough.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
great.
Both of those.
At the next meeting.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate your time tonight.
You get the bill.
just want to point out, 2 days from,
What? You gonna talk publicly?
actually something else, this has nothing to do with.
Well, you still gotta speak on the,
All right,
well,
I just want to point out 2 days from today, the 12th, there's going to be a
Say
comet.
What your name
Supposedly,
is?
there's going to be a comet about 100 miles away from Earth, or 100 miles away from the sun, I should say. So if there's a possibility, and if we have a good clear night, look towards the northern hemisphere, look towards Polaris, which is the North Star, and for those who don't know where it is, it's where the Big Dipper handle is. Look up, there's the North Star, there's a good chance you might see a comet.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Something else, something exciting to talk about.
Supposed to do that at the first 5 minutes of our meeting, but it was interesting. You sat here all that time to say that?
That was confusing.
Bye.
You can't combine the two things. We were going back and forth from one meeting
Went
to
to
the
the
next.
next.
I didn't know what,
Really
Right near the
confusing.
North Star,
Let's set it up that way again.
if it's a clear
we
night.
should try to avoid that.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, so the next application, provided that someone does come in and want to do a site plan review and a special permit at the same time, more than happy to combine them. In this case, they filed the site plan application first, and then within a month and a half later, they filed the special permit. So those two things were filed independently, and we could
They
not
just-
combine them procedurally. So
why could we
therefore,
not combine them simply by adjusting the dates on when they needed to be addressed?
well, so in effect, you are combining them on the agenda, meaning you're hearing them both at the same evening. But the applicant had the option to withdraw the site plan application, but chose not to. Chose to put it on hold, wait for those two timelines to intersect and create as much confusion as possible.
Correct.
Well done.
Then it was a success.
So here we are.
Glad to see it that way.
Yes.
Committee reports.
John has, John, you have a committee report?
I don't really have a committee report, but I'll make a comment on behalf of the Water Quality Management Committee. A week ago Monday, there was an article on the front page of New York Times about the sewer condition in Mashpee. And the headline said, I don't have it with me here, but Cape Cod is sinking in its own muck or something like that. It was a terrible, terrible article talking about the conditions on the Mashpee River. I received a number of phone calls, one from a guy in California saying, what the hell's going on Cape Cod? I also spoke to Eric Turkington about it. He was very concerned about it because it was not a good article. And I can get you a copy of it if you want to read it, but it was a very, very lengthy article. It started on the front page and it had a whole page inside. So it was really not helpful for what's going on here. And it certainly is not representative of what the town of Falmouth has been doing. And I told someone that we're spending $100 million addressing wastewater treatment here in Falmouth, and it was not representative of what the article said. So it was a most unfortunate article, but I got a copy from the library, but it was, the way they printed it was like 20 pages. So I'll see if I can get a better copy and I can share it with you. But it was not a good article.
Well, it might take the pressure off the housing market.
Do we have any announcements?
After reading that, we don't have to worry about housing.
Yeah. People leave it.
Doing this right here.
Thank you.
Does anybody know what pipe they're laying along 151? It looks like sewer pipe to me, because
Oh,
The
what they're
drainage.
doing.
it's just drainage?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're concrete, they're drainage.
Yeah, I mean, they're huge.
Yeah, what a
Thought they were
mess.
widening it out.
Yeah,
John,
I
do
was
you-
kind of hoping they were doing sewer, but I guess not.
John, do you have a committee report?
Yes, I asked to have everyone get a copy of CPC. We're going to be voting Thursday evening on our warrant articles for the town of Falmouth. And there's,
Where do we have that?
I think there was a handout.
And the extra stuff that was
Oh,
next to, at the bottom, that was next to your packets.
So I'll read the articles.
oh, okay, thank
The
you.
proposed articles. One is the Upper Coonamessett Restoration Project. Second one is Little Pond Conservation Area Phase 2 Public Access Improvement Project. 3 is Edward Marks Jr. Building Exterior Renovation Phase 2. Old Burying Ground ground penetrating radar survey, Dr. Francis Wick's house restoration, Phase 2, Highfield Hall exterior restoration and water abatement project, funds for the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, and then, of course, our CPC administrative expenses. But we're going to be voting on these Thursday evening. We vetted these already, but we're going to take our vote and then send it to town meeting.
Nice.
What's the amount that they're planning for the Affordable Housing Fund?
It's proposed to be 3 million, but we haven't determined that yet.
Ah,
It'll be our discussion and then vote. But the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund has requested it to be $3 million.
uh-huh. Is there any restriction put on that as to the amount that's spent on single-family housing as opposed to multiple-family housing?
Well, so far, we've just been funding rental units. So,
Okay, so they're mostly multifamily.
correct.
Great.
And part of what we started a few years ago is, before we were just funding nonprofits. And then we had a couple of applicants that were for-profit developers. And one of them had a 40B approved for 20 apartments. 5 were going to be deed restricted. And they requested some money from Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund if they would do the other 15 units deed restricted. And then we had an applicant that was approved for 10 condominiums and decided to go rental, and 3 of them had to be deed restricted. And for some additional money from our fund, they committed to do all 10 deed restricted. So the money has been purchasing additional deed restricted
Right.
units in perpetuity.
Oh, nice.
Right, it seems
So-
like a really good decision to include
And like
these.
$65,000 a unit, but you certainly can't build a building for $65,000,
Right.
so. So that's why when the gentleman was speaking this evening, I wanted to make it clear that the town, through their taxpayer dollars and through the state's contribution, we have been funding affordable housing
Well, and
painlessly.
he made a point that Falmouth is ahead of a number of other communities, although he didn't say which ones, on affordable housing.
Yes, and I think the town's going to have a new survey done for housing to find out where we're at with it.
How close are we to making our safe haven?
Well, if Kimco gets approved, that,
I think right now we're around 75%.
No, but I
Right.
mean, making a safe haven to just protect us year by year.
Well, like Jim started to say, if Kimco came in and we approved them and they pulled their permits, I think it's 75
it
permits.
buys us 2 years, I think.
But it only counts once they're permitted, right?
Yes.
Correct.
They don't have to be built, they have to be permitted.
I think that's what it is.
75 permits in 1 year allows you to deny
To deny.
the next year of a 40B
And
development.
they're doing 150.
Right. so
And we
they-
have a couple others, so I think it adds up to
That's
2 or
2
3,
years.
2 or maybe 3 years,
Right.
if you add it up.
And
And that's all we can hope for at this point. We're not gonna get 500 of them.
Well, you never know. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't want to answer that question. There is additional land. I mean, there's, Stop and Shop has some area where they could build apartments. The Falmouth Mall has area where they could build
That's where
apartments.
we
Yeah.
want it.
Then they're mixed-use developments and they're on the sewer, so.
Yeah, actually, that's it.
The point I was trying to make is if Kimco does get approved,
Others will
it
follow.
will have other property owners understand what they can do and how easy the process is, and.
Well, right
but
now,
it
the
takes
holdup is
time.
the
It
lift
takes time.
station
It takes time to build these, I
I
mean,
think that's it, yeah.
and the funding for the lift station.
but the town has done a wonderful job towards affordable housing, and that's the point I was trying to make this evening. The solution isn't there yet, but we're on our way.
Well, I think you made the point. And made it, when there might have been an audience for the TV. Who knows? Planning Department report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I have to report is, Jim, you had asked us to look into battery storage and whether or
Yes.
not battery storage was allowed in the zoning bylaw. What I discovered was, yes, it's allowed, but only in the overlay district, the large
Only-
ground-mounted solar overlay district, because it's part of a solar energy system, and that would incorporate the panels, the conduits, any sort of storage devices for battery storage. Anywhere else in town, I don't see any evidence that the bylaw indicates that it's an allowed use, either by special permit or by right.
We might want to get some advice. People tell me that unless we get back the storage for electric, it's never going to work. That the only way that is going to work is if we find a way we can have battery storage, because both wind doesn't run all the time, and the sun doesn't shine all the time. And that's the only way, if we're going to get to that number, it has to have storage. So maybe we want to think about that. That's all I want to bring up. I don't know where.
Yeah, it's actually a topic, apparently the Cape Cod Commission is working on.
Yeah.
They drafted a model, solar overlay district bylaw, and included in that, there's a lot of literature on battery storage. Because a lot of places are looking into it, and trying to figure out how they can incorporate it into their bylaws to allow it, anywhere in town, be it by special permit or by right. So there's definitely language out there, and we'll take a look at it.
How big is such a thing?
Well, it depends. I mean, my understanding, not an expert, some of them can be very big. In fact, the town that I live in there's a proposal right at a substation, not associated with a solar field. It's just a pad of batteries that'll be located next to a substation. Now, my understanding is that it's for redundancy purposes, right? It stores the power when you need it, if there's a disruption, et cetera. But then there are also battery storage facilities that would naturally be located near solar fields. And that's what we have here in the town. So in the overlay district, you can create a solar farm, and you can have a battery storage system. At least that's my interpretation of the bylaw.
I've seen pictures of
Associated
that
with
look like two semi-trucks. That's about the size of them.
The people who are going to build on the golf course, remember that we,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
They showed structures on that that are not overwhelmingly huge.
No, they're not pretty.
In our bylaw, how much land can they clear in our bylaw?
I didn't think they could, they had to take land that was already
Mhm,
cleared.
Already
Right.
disturbed.
Oh, okay, I thought
Yeah.
we allowed us, maybe at 2 acres or something.
I think you do.
Yes.
Did we? Yeah.
But then there are conditions that they have to meet
Right.
if they do go over the 2 acres. I
Right.
don't know it.
It's
offhand.
right across the street from where I'm working in Sandwich right now, they just cleared 7 acres of woods, put in a solar farm.
Hmm.
So my understanding is that there's some battery storage already in place in town, up at the fairgrounds. I haven't been up there to visit it, but
Solar panels?
Yep, for the solar panels, yep. So Gary and I spent some time looking at those plans, and, they show battery storage right there on the site. So, one of the days that, I have some free time, I plan to go up there and just take some photos and give you a sense for what they look like now.
Good idea.
Well, fortunately, the solar district that we created is pretty well hidden,
Yeah, oh, yeah, it was great.
anyway.
Yep.
Any other planning department reports?
I have nothing, but I defer to our assistant town planner if she's got anything to say.
Okay. Any announcements? Paul?
Last month, Brian Howes passed away. I don't know if you remember who he is, but he was a researcher working for the restoration of coastal bays on Cape Cod. He was also the head of the Coastal Systems Program at UMass for about 20 years. And he was instrumental in meeting a lot of committees, frequently with the Water Quality Management Committee, which I attend. But he studied water quality in Wacoit Bay and Pompanesett Bay for 20 years. He's analyzed the effectiveness of shellfish aquaculture in Bourne's Pond for reducing nitrogen loading, and he's made presentations on many, many town committees. He was only 70 years old, but he was very knowledgeable and very well respected in the field. I would be remiss if I didn't mention it.
He contributed a lot.
Here's a obituary if you'd like to read it.
As long, the article you sent me on city planning. It's really interesting.
Can't read this now, but I'll look it up.
And would you mind if I send it to the other members of the board? Is it all right if I do that?
Sure.
Okay, it's on city planning.
Or you can,
Since Babylon, so it goes back a ways, but it's an interesting thing. Okay, general correspondence?
okay, I have one other thing.
Sure.
Here's a guy who did the modeling study to determine the width of the new Minot Bridge.
Oh,
So
really?
he made presentations, I remember having an interchange with him on whether you should have two openings or just, keep the one there and go back to the old opening that was filled in. And we had a lengthy discussion on that at one point. But he was very instrumental on water quality issues here in the town of Falmouth.
Future agenda items. Anyone have suggestions? Bob?
Conversion bylaw.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. We have, that was on our list of low-hanging fruit.
All right,
Which is?
Conversion bylaw.
see if we can update it, change the dates
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah,
maybe other things.
yeah.
Anyone else interested in trying to look into controlling the short-term rental situation? I think it'd be a good thing to do. Okay, we won't put it actually as an agenda item, but if you could just sort of Google it a little bit and see what's out there, see
what
if,
other towns are doing.
yeah, see what they're doing, and see if any of them have been successful. It's a hard thing to do. Our next meeting will,
Especially if you're in my business.
Yeah, you take it,
Oh.
you're taking rights away. It's always hard to take rights
this
away.
might not work well
No,
for
I
you.
don't think it would work well for me.
Unless you're the Supreme
Too
Court.
bad about that, Jim.
You're not
final
gonna get me to
comment.
help with that.
When the chair goes out of town, they need to tell the people when they're missing.
Yes, I apologize for that. I didn't realize there would be such interest in my comings and goings. Really, it created a funny picture in my mind.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor, yes.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That was a confusing meeting, and I apologize for
hard
creating
meeting.
a lot of the confusion.